So, Ash, welcome. Happy Friday.
Hi, Augustine. Happy Friday.
How are you doing today?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. I'm on holiday next week, so looking forward to having a week off.
Oh, nice. Perfect. Perfect. Well, thanks so much for doing this. I won't keep you very long. I know it's a Friday when I'm recording this, although I'm going to publish it on post it on Monday, so you'll see it on the YouTube. Well, it's your first
Nice.
time here, so as I normally do with all SEOs, I like to know how you got into SEO. So, with that said, how did you become an SEO professional?
Cool. So I studied consumer behavior marketing at university, and I've always sort of had an interest in tech, but never knew what SEO was for a long time. Just knew I wanted to get into digital marketing, so that's sort of what I pursued following university, but went into quite, I guess, a generalist role, and then they sort of pushed me into email marketing quite early in my career. And to be quite honest, found email marketing dead boring. Wasn't for me. And anyway, I basically went away for a year, went traveling for a bit, and then came back. Anyway, my brother was sort of starting up his business, and he was just like, "Look, I need someone to come do my marketing. Would you come and help me? I need to set up a new website, all that kind of stuff." And I was like, obviously didn't have a job at the time, so I was like, "Yeah, sweet, I'll come back and do that. That sounds like a good little gig for a while." Ended up doing that for over a year, and sort of building up his site from scratch, working with an agency, building like a sort of WordPress site. Didn't have a huge budget, but hired a sort of freelance content writer, because I kind of got into sort of more like content marketing, because I knew that was sort of something we could kind of grow. I thought I was looking at the sort of SEO as a channel, like, oh, it looks really kind of quite affordable, something we can definitely get into without having to spend huge amounts of money. It's my watch. Yeah, so did that for a while, and had quite a lot of success, growing sort of traffic organically, through writing articles that are targeting sort of specific markets and things like that. And then I kind of got, I guess, hit the end of the road in that type of role, and went into an agency role, and then spent about 3 years in two different agencies, one in a sort of smaller independent agency, and then again moving on to a more larger network agency. And then I guess, but in the roles I had there, was sort of chucked in the deep end with sort of larger clients, really kind of immersed in the technical side of things, so really kind of building lots of knowledge in the technical side, and then I guess eventually moving into more like strategic marketing, and delivery of that. And then now I've moved sort of in-house, following that time there, into a sort of larger enterprise brand.
Awesome. So you've done both client side and, well, agency side and in-house. Just out of interest, which do you prefer?
Definitely in-house.
I somehow guessed you were going to say that, but I thought I'd ask anyway.
No. Agency's good, and I would recommend doing agency to anyone getting into SEO for sure, because I think it's definitely a great place where you kind of immersed in lots of different brands, lots of different markets. You're going to sit and work with people who are all doing SEO or similar. So you're kind of immersed in that. So it's a really good foundational place to be. I just think that my personal opinion on the whole kind of agency in-house sort of divide is that there's a real big limitation of how much you can do in an agency, because you're not, to actually affect things in a business, you need to be like really in the deep end, build the relationships internally, understand how the business works, and be able to kind of build that web of influence internally to make things happen. When you're in an agency, you're really limited by your client relationships and how much influence they have within the business. So you might be a very talented SEO in an agency, but if your client or people you deal with don't have a huge amount of influence or don't understand the subjects as well as you do, it's hard to kind of relay that communication or find ways to kind of navigate those avenues to get things done in a more effective ways.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. Like, I like to say, agency side, the end goal essentially is to become a salesperson, right? That's what all SEOs agencies side. I would probably say other marketing channels as well aim to do. It's all about the selling. Whereas when you're client side, you have to be an SEO marketer. And I know it's a slight play on words, but I think there is a difference between the two. And client side, as you mentioned, you get to affect change.
Yeah, when you say sales, do you mean like sales from the agency's point of view, or sales from a
sales from the agency point of view? So, for example, it's all about pitching, getting in work, or renewing work. I think most agencies, the ideal situation is they renew work, so they retain their client. But when you're client side, you have to get results, as in have things implemented, which means you have to liaise with the different departments.
Yeah, I think it is very different. I think doing client side and in-house, I think when you're in-house, obviously you're much more integrated into the business, and you can go and sit with anyone in the business, and you can go and sort of have meetings with anyone in the business, and you can really start to try and understand what different departments are doing, why they're doing it that way, who's who has influence, who doesn't have influence, how can you affect change in different ways. You really kind of get a deeper understanding of that. With agency, I think there's definitely obviously a desire to do all of those things. I think it's just that there's a limitation, and often what you'll find is an agency, you're kind of outputting changes, and I guess your objective is to try and get those changes implemented to have a good relationship with your client and see benefits from it. But you are really really limited by the blocking factors that might affect those changes going into place. But I think any sort of good client that works with an agency should understand, how do you, making sure that things are being prioritized based on impact, that business cases are being built, and should help to kind of communicate any thing that's preventing change from happening. Another thing to consider as well, though, from an agency point of view, is that the different clients they work with, you have to remember that some businesses are much smaller, so they're much more agile, and their ability to implement things can be quite quick. Whereas sometimes when you're working with larger agencies, and I work in quite a large, big enterprise brand, they have really solid processes, and a lot of people are like, well, can't you just jump in the CMS and just make that update yourself? And you're like, no, you can't do that. like you have to go through someone's process, and then they've got a backlog, and they've got 10 other teams asking them to do something, and you have to understand that to be able to understand that if you're firing 100 changes at someone, that might take 3 months for that full list to be implemented. Or something like that. So it is there's go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I finished what I was saying.
Okay, I was going to say, that's just the reality of how the reality of SEO. The implementation is a big factor, and I will always say it's the difference maker, I think, between those who really succeed with their SEO and those who do not. Having a strategy, having recommendations, that's all good. But can you affect change, right? So let's say working with developers, and on this podcast, I always use developers as an example. But I promise I'm not picking on developers. But when working with developers, there is always a pushback. I've never not had pushback from developers. It's slightly different when working with content writers. I think as SEOs, we're very close with copywriters. But developers, we always get pushback from them. How is it influencing developers to care about SEO recommendations and to actually go ahead and start working on implementing them?
I think obviously it really depends on the people you're dealing with as well. Like obviously some people, they know the benefits, they buy into the value. And often there's a cultural element to it as well, in terms of like whether the business in general understands the value of SEO and what the sort of legacy of that channel has been in the business in the past. but I think ultimately, if you to get generally, I've always had quite positive relationship with developers. I think if you're a technical SEO, especially if you speak on their level and you're understanding to their issues that they're facing, and you're not trying to just be like barge in and be like, my stuff's the most important in the room. You have to bring them. You have to bring them on the journey with you and understand the impact of things that are going wrong. Like, if for example, something they've done has impacted SEO negatively, I'll be the first one to point that out to them and be like, look, this is what's happened. I'm not going to be annoyed or angry. It's just about being like, look, like this has caused our, visibility to just drop off, or, our crawl rate's just absolutely gone through the floor. Things like that, you can kind of show them with graphs and be like, look, this is the impact of these actions. And then how do we go about resolving that? So you can kind of, I guess, and I actually find that they're naturally problem solvers as well, right? So if you're kind of giving them decent problems to solve and helping them to achieve those problems, they also get the self satisfaction of seeing the impact of those changes improve. In terms of just generally, obviously, I think it depends on what they're doing and what they're building, and obviously they have their own pressures and they have their own kind of objectives of what they're trying to achieve. And obviously that's where it's really important for an SEO to have influence within the business, not just at the sort of developer level, but more senior level, to obviously then make SEO more of a priority, and by showing and demonstrating the business value from the channel, right? So I mean, my experience has been in businesses which have a well-established SEO performance. So I'm not sort of trying to build it from scratch, I guess. But if you're demonstrating and you're saying, if we are, losing 1% SEO value, in a business such as the one I work in, that's like £1 million of revenue a year, or something or more. So it's, the small changes can have big knock-on impacts on the revenue that the business might experience. So it's trying to relate that back as well, and understanding the impact of what you're doing and how that relates back to it from a financial point of view. And that's kind of, and then also I guess getting in that buy-in as well from a dev support point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree. Within the industry, there is this thinking or this culture that SEO takes roughly 3 to 6 months to quote unquote work. And I find that a lot of business leaders, they have that in their mind. And when things don't work out within that time frame, they get very frustrated. How do you go about communicating to them the old or the typical adage that the 3 to 6 months is very, it's not true.
I think that I think part of getting people into that mindset is trying to get people to realize that SEO is a longer term game when compared to something like pay-per-click, paid search, where you can literally just fire out an ad immediately and put money into it, and it's there and it's straight there, and you get the results, and you can pull some levers and upweight some money somewhere and see the results almost immediately. With SEO, obviously it's a longer term game, so it's trying to get people to understand that you're not going to see if we update the keyword on this page title and add a H1 and update the URL to point to this URL and XYZ, that might not result in overnight sort of performance changes that will kind of change the game of the business and grow revenue exponentially. It's about sort of trying to get that understanding of the fact that it is a long-term view in the first place, and then I think the point of I guess it being that you can obviously then it isn't just obviously a 3 to 4 month game or a 3 to 6 month or a 1 year game. It's just trying to get that understanding of okay, well, if we want to build authority in a certain area, then that might take a long time. If we already have a pre-established authority, we need to obviously understand what's holding performance back from performing better in markets where we probably could be performing better. So those things might be that it might take us 3 to 4 months to get that development work through the system, or it could be that work might take, we're a year off even coming anywhere near, changing the structure of the site to be in a better position which is currently holding back performance, or it might be something we can do overnight, where we can put a no index tag on a page which is currently causing cannibalization issues, and then get our page that we do want to rank to be performing much better. And that might happen quite quickly, if our crawl rate's doing really well. So it's never like a black and white, like there's a 3 to 4 month time frame that things have to happen within. I think it's just about communicating the issues that we're facing and the expected timelines for something like that to be resolved more accurately, so that business leaders and stuff like that have a little bit more of an understanding. But that's just all about, I guess, building trust and confidence in the work that you're doing.
So let's say a CMO, if I'm a CMO and I'm looking to grow the web traffic, grow revenue via web traffic, and I look at all channels performing, and I see SEO underperforming, in my view. And I'm getting this rhetoric that SEO is a long-term game. It's you invest in it now, a couple of years' time, you see the result of it. It's all of that good stuff, right? Why would I go ahead and invest in SEO when I can use other channels and get results quicker?
I mean, you do get that a lot, because obviously there is a kind of, especially if someone's come from a paid performance background and hasn't really had positive experiences with SEO, which is actually quite common. So I think it is about trying to prove value in what you're doing. I think there is obviously an element of SEOs needing to be good at and getting better at, and I think they are at communicating, what we do, how it impacts things. We do have a lot of data at our fingertips, and I think that data is hugely valuable, showing search trends, search volume for markets and things like that, and really sort of like translating that to those CMOs. But I think fundamentally, I think the thing that works easiest and the quickest is just being like, what's our competitor doing? And if they're doing it a lot better than they are, the first thing you have to do is point at that and demonstrate how much value they're getting from that traffic versus how much we're paying for it. That can quickly turn around the conversation. But yeah, it is an element of like, getting that buy-in, building that trust, I guess, and using data really to kind of leverage the sort of business case that you're trying to build.
Yeah, I find that competitor data is always the best thing to get people on board, turn them around, especially senior management folks. We've somehow have left senior or business leaders with the impression that SEO is all about keywords, rankings, and links. Links has always been a favorite for a lot of people. We can probably talk all day about links and the effect that has brought on certain algorithms. But people, CMOs, business leaders, they have this idea that SEO is all about keywords, rankings, and links. Is this the case? And if not, how would you go about changing a business leaders?
I'd say SEO it's evolved. I'd say that's what it was like. I feel like that's what the conversations were mostly focused around, sort of maybe 10, even 15, well, probably about 15 years ago in the industry. It's moved on a lot since then. I think the conversation needs to be focused around like any good business leader should understand like machine learning and AI is fundamentally changing the game across like every industry. And that's no different in search. And I think that you can communicate like in a more intelligent way than sort of using these like jargony words like links and keywords and things like that, by kind of relating it back to sort of like the experience that someone's having with your brand and the different touch points that they're experiencing the brand from. And I think that you can kind of bring that in and say, look, like SEO is literally just, it's basically UX with, on top of that, a kind of adding like the ability for search engines to understand what the hell your website's doing, basically, and what and how to kind of grade you differently to your competitors. So I guess the fundamentally, like, search engines are trying to move in a direction of trying to ensure that the experience that they're delivering to the searcher is the best experience they can, because that's what's going to keep people coming back to their search engine and keep people using it, and consider it to be a trusted source of information. So ultimately, your search engine optimization is just about matching that positive experience, and that has benefits across everything, right? So it's about creating a really good brand experience, right? You know, every company wants to create a positive brand experience, and SEO is actually like the catalyst, or a catalyst in the room for achieving that. And that's why SEO is so interesting, right? Especially when you're in-house, like, you know, you can go and influence and sit across every single team in the business, almost, that's sort of affected by the digital channel. So, you know, you can go and like influence UX, you can influence copywriting, you can go and influence like data teams, you can influence merchandising. You know, your web of influence is huge, and being an SEO means that you get to almost kind of unify that experience across all of those different elements within the business.
Absolutely. With influencing several departments, there is this thinking within SEO that SEO should be everything to everyone. So SEO should be web developers, should be copywriters, etc., etc. And then there is this thinking that actually SEO should influence web developers, influence copywriters, etc., etc. Where do you fall within those two train of thoughts, those two camps?
I think that expecting a copywriter and a web developer and everyone in between to know SEO as well as you do, is probably unrealistic. I think generally, obviously, it would be great if everyone came into the business knowing SEO, you know, to a good degree that meant that they kind of built it into their workflow naturally. But in reality, that just doesn't happen. You know, you speak to most people, you know, who's a copywriter, and they're like, yeah, no, I know about keywords, but that's about it. And so that's, you know, and that's the thing. And obviously, I think there does definitely need to be, I mean, I come from the sort of larger side of SEO, operationally. So I guess from my perspective, you've got to empower each team to be able to do SEO to the best of their ability. But the other thing to consider as well is that you might have a strategy about how you're going about it. And that means that being able to have some influence over how they're doing SEO is definitely going to be useful to you, but ultimately at the same time, you don't have enough resource to micromanage or control or be kind of fundamentally always overseeing everything that they're doing. So you can't do that. So ultimately, there has to be a balance between empowering them to be able to do the SEO themselves, but ultimately at the same time, turning to you for that advice and that direction from an SEO point of view.
Yeah, I think spreading the awareness of SEO is nowadays seen as the fundamental aspect, and then the more hands-on or shall I say deeper thinking of SEO is left to SEOs. I know a number of companies, a number of brands these days who have started to have SEOs specifically as project managers. So they have a project manager who's like an SEO project manager, and that is what they do full time. And their part of their remit is to influence other departments and spread the awareness, evangelize SEO essentially. And I think that is the way that the industry is leading to.
100%. 100%. That, I mean, that kind of really resonates, I guess, with a lot of what myself and my team do. You know, the amount of times they've turned around and said, I feel like I'm like a project manager, basically. Because essentially they are like, you know, managing, you know, different aspects and delivery across lots of different teams and ensuring that SEO is being sort of considered quite strongly in all the work that's being done. Definitely.
What's your favorite area of SEO? Like technical, on page, or content, or off page?
I'm a technical SEO by trade, I guess. You know, I wouldn't consider myself a writer. However, you know, you don't have to be a writer to do content SEO. Fundamentally, I'm not someone who can just sort of sit down and write blogs. There are sort of different SEOs who really love doing that. That's, I guess, more on the creative side. I'm more of a techie. I love to kind of feel like I'm getting under the skin of how a website's built and pull out the wires. Well, not pull out the wires, but like understand how the wires are all kind of crossed over and sort of try to build it all together. I think it depends on how your mind works and what really interests you as a person. Whether sort of you're going to be more sort of interested in the content or the tech side. But I guess most of the time I'm nowadays more doing a lot more strategy, and I guess kind of when you think about strategy, because I've got relatively large SEO team, it means I'm trying to obviously like channel each person to achieve our goals, which means that I can kind of get involved in all the different aspects of whatever different people are doing, but not sort of always getting deep in the weeds of things. Tend to obviously take on the more challenging aspects of it, which do require sort of having a bit more sort of experience or knowledge around the subject. But I also enjoy the sort of, I enjoy every aspect of it. I enjoy the data analysis side as well. Like the data analysis side is super interesting. I love to kind of do a lot of like automation around sort of analysis where possible. I think that just if you're an SEO, I think you've got to have a love of problem solving, and I think that can filter into everything you do. So I definitely love the technical side, and I definitely love the data side. I'd say content is obviously fundamental, but it's not something I probably have the biggest passion about in SEO.
There's something about SEO that attracts people who really like to solve problems, whether you're technical, on page, off page, strategic, analytical. There's something about it that I think it's because it's so broad that it ignites the different areas of our brains, maybe, that really gets us like interested in like improving things. And I always say, like, that's essentially what SEO is about, making improvement, right? Whatever base you are, the goal is to make improvement. And we tend to see how things could be improved. I think that's what really gets us, or keeps us interested in SEO, I should say. Now, go ahead.
No, Karen, if you're going to ask a question.
Okay, I was going to switch gears to search engines. We tend to stick with Google. I would say most SEOs focus on Google. But these days, we have TikTok. And I've been very interested in TikTok for the last couple of months because they now have a search functionality, and they're pushing a search functionality. And I've been reading a couple of articles on TikTok, and people are saying that I always get this wrong, Gen Alpha, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, the new folks getting into the workforce. They say they tend to use TikTok as their base for search rather than Google for their search. What's your take on TikTok being a threat to Google?
Yeah. So funny enough, TikTok used to be my client, so I kind of spent a lot of time on their site, working out on their website, not their app, obviously. Like just getting under the skin of that site and how that site's built and how they operate as a company. I genuinely don't see them as a threat to Google. Fundamentally, they're just they're chaotic as a company, to be honest, and they're nowhere near sort of Google operationally. But that said, it's a different type of search, and I think the next generation, I think it's how are they discovering? Search is about discovery, right? And it's information searching, right? And if TikTok is serving people in the sense that they want to look at a product, and they might be like, right, I want to see videos about I don't know, the latest iPad and how people are experiencing it, and that's how they're sort of absorbing information. I think that's a fundamental shift in how people are looking for information. I personally think that that's a niche group of people that are going to look for information in that group in that certain way. The other thing is TikTok as a search engine. If you've ever used it, it's absolutely terrible. It's getting better, of course, and they obviously are trying to improve it a lot. But they're building in like lots of different things now to improve it. But I've tried to search for stuff before, and it's just like it just doesn't work the way you want it to work. I don't know if that's just my personal experience, but I personally think it's still got a long way to go. However, I have seen the research around whether a lot more people are using it, and I think that's definitely a trend that's happening. Whether that's long term, whether that's going to be a shift, and maybe it will eat into some of Google's search share and of sort of attention share. It may well do. I don't think Google's going anywhere anytime soon, though, because Google serves a different type of market. Like it's optimizing websites, and it's serving information, and Google is so enrooted into what the web is. It's basically only came about about 6 or 7 years after sort of predominantly most people started to get computers and sort of start using the web. We're very I think we have to think very long term. Like we are literally still in the very early stages of what the internet is and where it's taking us as a society. I was kind of born before, and I'm not very old. I'm only sort of 30 years old. I was born in a time where people didn't really use computers, and I was sort of coming out of school when mobile phones were only becoming sort of mainstream, like smartphones. So, it's still such an early technology. I think Google have a long road ahead of them in terms of search and where we're going to go with it. I think, yes, there's definitely going to be other contenders that are going to get into the market. There definitely won't always be Google domination, but Google have such a strong grip on how people use the web and how it's fundamentally ingrained into everything. That's I don't think will ever change. If you ask me what things like companies like Apple might do to try and get into it, that might be a slightly different story.
Yeah, I think still Amazon is still Google's biggest competitor. No, in fact, Google is a competitor of Amazon. I should get that right. But I think there's something interesting about TikTok. I haven't quite gotten my head around it yet, but I think there's something about the way people search that will change. And I don't even have my thoughts or words right on this or correct on this. I just have thoughts like sparks of thoughts whenever I think of the way people use TikTok. I say that because content these days, I think video is now the core medium, if you like, for content. Whereas it used to be text, copy. Now people would much rather watch a video on something, even if it's like the ingredients of how to bake a pie. They'd much rather watch a video than read an article on it. And there is something about that I think is changing the way people search, in that they almost expect a video on whatever they search for these days.
Yeah, definitely. I think it will depend on what they're searching and what type of information they're consuming and how that video can better serve the content that it's promoting. I definitely think there's more space for video, and I think it's definitely a hugely undertapped area that businesses don't get into as much as they should do. I definitely have always been a promoter for video content. I think it's it's always going to, from an SEO point of view, even having a video on your page is obviously going to help from a ranking signals point of view So, you know, people spending more time on the page, engaging with the page more, and getting more being served better information from it, and getting that sort of expertise from the page. I think what we're kind of talking about here really is more just like the diversification of search, and that it's no longer just the sort of text item. You know, a lot of people in search now are thinking about, like, you know, the 0-click option, like being in the featured snippet, or how else is Google displaying the information on the page, and how do we get into that? How do we get into the news? How do we get the videos? How do we get everywhere? Essentially, it's anyone that's sort of got an intelligent SEO strategy is thinking about the wider space rather than just the sort of getting that into that blanket traditional SEO options. And I definitely think there is going to be continually more and more weight put into SEOs being able to optimize all of those different areas. And I think more mature SEOs more mature SEO teams will be doing a lot of that, and thinking about a lot of that already. I think it's just very hard and maybe it will diversify, and you'll get specific people who only do, you know, TikTok SEO in the future. If there's a value in it, if the business can see value in it, for sure, 100%. I think, but really, I think you've got to prove it's got to be seen as a sort of long, you know, something that's requires someone to do in the long run, and there's sort of the expertise and skills to deliver it that's going to see a kind of return on that invested time and resource.
Maybe. I think these days we have App Store optimization specialists, so it might be a case that it becomes more diversified. Yeah.
I mean, have you ever done App Store optimization? There's only like about 10 things you can do, but it's
not as complex as Google at all.
It's not as complex as SEO, no. But yeah, but I think that definitely there's a space for it. But I think it's never going to be, unless there's like a real growth and return area. I 100% think that, you know, we're going to see more like Amazon, you know, SEO kind of specialists, and the same probably for TikTok as well, because, you know, TikTok getting into the sort of e-commerce areas, and they're selling a lot of products for their site now, and it definitely is going to be space and time for that, because, you know, more and more people are shopping online, and the digital channels are just getting in and growing huge, and the pandemic accelerated that massively. But yeah, I think that there's definitely going to be that, and while there's search, there's always going to be SEOs.
Yeah, I agree. I'll take it as, I'll even say, as long as you have a website where you require to acquire traffic, you need SEO. What has been your favorite algorithm update from Google?
Favorite algorithm update? I wish I was saying the helpful content update, because, you know, I was very like, I just hate the whole like niche website explosion that's been going on around, like people who've been like, right, I'm writing all this AI content and you know, making loads of money by having like a really niche topic, and Google was specifically calling that out in their update. They were like, you know, are you writing a niche website which you're going into an area that you don't have much expertise in? You're like, the whole point of a search engine is to serve good quality information, and I would love to say that the helpful content update is my favorite so far, but it hasn't really delivered any meaningful results so far from what I've seen. I think it's been a little bit of a kind of just not really delivered what it was. Maybe that will change. Maybe it's early, and maybe it's going to like improve and kind of snowball, I guess. Maybe it will.
Yeah.
But generally, I think I'm excited by, I guess it's not so much an update that we're seeing at the moment, by MUM, the mum update. That's sort of around the sort of unification of all the sort of different formats that they're talking about. It's not something that's necessarily coming out yet, but I think we're going to see the rollout of a much more intelligent search, where you sort of searching with you can take a picture of something and then say this sweater in red, and that will show you all the images and all the shops that would sell it to you. And you know when you've got that thing in your head that you really want to find something, but you just can't find it, and you spend ages like typing it into Google, like, and you just can't find it. I think we're going to head towards something more that's much more intuitive and intelligent, and you're able to kind of find that stuff much easier. Those kind of like thoughts and those sparks of thought that are like you're trying to find that information, but you just simply can't currently with Google. And I think they're going to serve that a lot better in the future with those sort of types of updates.
Interesting. Yeah, because people search for what they know to search for, right? If you want a laptop, in fact, another example. I remember when tablets, computer tablets, right, was becoming a thing. In the SERPs, the intent was still around pills. And it took a while before all of that changed. Now, if you search for tablet, you get the computers. But a while, like some years ago, it was all about pills. So the intent changes and Google serves their users. And I think us as marketers, especially business leaders, they forget that in theory, we're acquiring users from Google. We're acquiring their users, Google's users. So their entire goal, Google's entire goal, their mission statement is to serve users. And if we as marketers, as website owners, are not serving Google's users, why would Google continue to rank the sites higher than others who are serving users better than we are? And it's interesting that train of thought never crosses business leaders' minds. They think it's all about SEO is all about keywords, rankings, and links. But all of that is changing. I'm looking forward to the day where SEOs are within higher positions within businesses.
I think it's definitely. I think you're I guess alluding to the same thing where I was saying how I think we're still in very early stages of what the SEO industry is and how it will evolve, I guess, in the future. And I think fundamentally any business that wants to just survive in a strong digital economy will have to have a really good understanding of SEO as a strategic pillar to the business, and I think any future business leader hopefully will have some of that understanding, especially when they've come from the current I guess crop of SEOs that are in the industry, and I definitely think there will be more senior leadership that does understand SEO, and to be fair, I do see it in my current business, like some of the more senior team in the digital sales side of things have got SEO backgrounds, so they do, with that in mind, my job is made a lot easier probably because of that, because they understand the requirement for all the resource that you need to deliver the types of things that you're trying to deliver.
You know what I'm seeing more often these days with traditional marketing? I'm seeing search with and then the phrase or term. And I think that is a wonderful thing. Anytime I see something like that on TV, and I've even seen it on billboards, anytime I see something like that, it just makes me happy. It's like, oh, yes. We're becoming more familiar with folks.
You definitely notice it. Like more and more adverts, you say like search this, search this, search this. After every advert, because they understand that the journey that someone's going to is that that the search is the sort of the research area of search is the sort of middle of the funnel, I think, and then obviously it covers a lot of the funnel in marketing. Down to more specific searches when someone's ready to buy. But really, there is SEO covers a huge area of search. But to get someone to search for something, especially if it's sort of brand related, you need to be out there with sort of like wider marketing and advertising, and that's really just an understanding of the fact that when you see a cinema ad or you see a TV ad or a billboard and it says search this, they understand, and the marketers understand that the search is a fundamental part of the consumer purchase journey.
And it's actually teaching people what to search with. So it's saving a whole lot of people's research time, which is, again, serving users.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
all about the
users. Makes your life easier as well if you're supporting someone to search for something that's obviously going to be a result, and you're not having to battle against competitors for it. And it's like search for computers.
It's awesome.
You're like yeah. Just generally.
You mentioned. You mentioned we're still very early in terms of the stage that we're at. Where do you think search is headed? Let's say 5, 7, 10 years from now.
I think it's really hard to predict the further you go away. I think, and obviously there's so many variables and so many factors. I think with technology and the way it's going, it would definitely be a sort of search from anywhere situation. I think augmented reality is going to be, personally, I think augmented reality is going to be the biggest sort of fundamental change in the next sort of 10 years. In that, we'll probably, that Apple are obviously looking at things like the glasses and things like that are potentially going to come out in the next 2-3 years, and how we can, have that sort of integration of AR, and then I guess that's where voice search would start to take off, because with AR and voice search, I think combined, that's where I think search will allow us to enhance, and Google's going to have to adapt to that quickly, and that's why I think that it's really hard to predict where it's really going to go, but I think it's really going to become a lot more intelligent, a lot more intuitive, and a lot more integrated into people's lives, and so that it's more sort of fluid, and you can just quickly be like, reducing the friction points between you thinking about something, making a search, and receiving the information, because ultimately that search point is that trigger to identify something and serve it, and I think that a lot of tech companies are going to get really into that point to minimize that friction between thought and result.
I'm looking forward to it. I think augmented reality I'm personally into it. I haven't had much negative thoughts about it at all. I'm sure some people are not so keen on it, but I'm friggin' looking forward to it. I just want the what's that movie called? Minority Report experience, where I can search for something without actually needing a screen or whatnot. That'll be awesome.
Yeah. It's hard to say what it would exactly look like, because I think there's so many things that we have today that we wouldn't have dreamed of, and it does take a creative entrepreneur to come up to it and deliver it, for it to kind of shift things hugely, and technology is always like that, and the things you think might take off don't, and the things that you'd never expect come through. But fundamentally, I think search is definitely here to stay, and I think there's always going to be a space for search in the technology that we use.
Absolutely. In SEO, what is the one thing that you wish we still had?
In SEO, if there's one thing I wish we still had, in terms of
so I will let me
don't
tell
exist
you
anymore.
Don't exist anymore. Yeah. Mine, hands down, is definitely keyword tool, and being able to see keywords on Google Analytics.
Oh, Google Analytics. Yeah, that would be great, wouldn't it? Yeah, I think that's a great one, actually. Like, being able to see the result, like that really annoys me, that you can't just marry up the keyword that someone arrived at a site on and the result, and what happened, what did they convert, and that data. I know there's reasons for that, but it is so frustrating, and it just doesn't make. They could marry that up. That would be fantastic. Like, if we could really understand what keywords are really converted, much higher converting, and things like that. I think I don't really know. I guess I have to say, I haven't been in the industry that long to be able to say, oh yeah, no, there's a tool I wish we had, because I guess I'm still learning myself, about all the different tools, and there's so many out there. I think things are changing. I think one thing, I think it's probably not an answer to your question, but one thing I wish we had we don't right now is a bit more consolidation of the tools that are available in the market, I think, in terms of like a lot of them are just basically all doing the same thing slightly differently.
Yeah.
And it means that, you know, you have to learn the tools slightly differently, and one person's used one tool and then they're all kind of competing, and it's a bit of a kind of wild west of tools out there, and then everyone's still really just getting the most out of a tool like Screaming Frog, which costs like £100 or something. So I think it's a bit of a crazy industry for tools and stuff like that. And as I said, like, you know, we're still very early in an emerging industry, and I think there will be consolidation eventually. Or what could happen is Google just builds it better than everyone else. And you can kind of see that happening with Search Console, just constantly adding new features.
I would love that.
Yeah. And I think they will have to because you know, I've known someone who worked at Google, and they said they weren't allowed to use external tools when they were doing SEO. So anything that they had to use had to be an existing Google tool. So, you know, it's very hard to do a lot of SEO work without some of the tools that are on the market. So I think fundamentally, like, you know, Google will try to create its own ecosystem of SEO tools. Might not be the best ones on the market, but I think that will happen. I think they'll expand and improve that. And there obviously are features of webmaster tools that they've had that are still kind of in that legacy section that people still like to use, because I guess they are still fundamentally, you know, serving a purpose, right?
Yeah. If there was one SEO tool that you could buy, let's say you have an unlimited budget and you really love this SEO tool and you just want to acquire it, which would it be?
What, to own it or to
own it,
use it?
To own and use it.
Or that's a good question, actually. To own it or to use it as a tool, like to own it as a
to own it. So you now own this tool. Yeah.
Interesting one. It's interesting one. I think I'd like to just buy all of the cloud crawlers and just merge them all into one tool, so that we've got one like good tool that does everything,
one ultimate
and
tool.
Doesn't like and like one ultimate tool. Like, no, I think there's a space for every tool having its like small being specialist, because you don't want to have like one tool that does everything generalist. I think that would be the ideal situation, where you've got one tool that does everything really well, right? But in reality, that's not going to happen, because they're not going to have the time to focus on the detail of every aspect of that tool. Maybe that's where it will go. Maybe it's not where it will go. But I definitely think that's why I think consolidation is required in the market, because there's certain companies that do things slightly better than each one, and as an SEO, you just want to be able to use a tool and it just does everything that you need it to do without having to be worried about it being slightly worse than the tool or not doing it quite how you think it should be done. You just want it to be able to just get on and do your job right, and to be able to do it best of your ability and intelligently, and not have to kind of look at getting a new tool every 3 years because one tool got slightly better in that period, you know? So
mine hands down, I have to say it's got to be Screaming Frog. It's the one I use probably. I don't think there's a day that goes by where I don't have Screaming Frog open.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for a simple crawl.
It's bread and butter.
Well,
it's bread and butter.
Yeah. It's a good way.
And I'm discovering new features in it all the time.
You
know, I'm
me
like,
too.
Yeah. I'm just gonna charge my phone because I think it's might be running out of battery soon. It's definitely the fundamentally, I think it's definitely the best tool in the market for hands down, and that's not even considering the cost of it.
Exactly.
So, you know, I think you know, if I was going to buy that tool, I would just put it on a subscription and just make sure that you know there's so many people out there just using the same license that they definitely aren't maximizing the revenue of that business. But I think that just says a lot about the people who own and run it, is that they're just trying to build a good tool, right? They're just trying to make a good tool, and they don't care about just making as much money as they can.
Yeah, and I friggin' love that. I really do.
Yeah.
For SEOs who are interested in becoming, sorry, I said that wrong. For someone who's interested in becoming an SEO, how would you suggest they go about being an SEO professional?
I think don't get into SEO just because you think it's cool or you think it's like a good career. I think you've got to get into SEO because you've got to have a passion for how understanding how websites are built, for understanding being interested in the serving sort of users' interests and matching search intent and understanding that and solving problems fundamentally. I think the if you want to enjoy SEO is a very enjoyable role if you go into it for the right reasons. How to get into it? I think there's many different ways into it. There's no one set path, I think, and I think that there's every SEO you meet has always come in some different point in time at some different way. Because there's no sort of like traditional SEO training school that everyone goes to. It's very very sort of like kind of a bit wild, I guess, in some ways. I think you've just got to be. It depends on what opportunities are available to you at the time. If you are young, I would say build your own website. Just like put together a WordPress website, learn how to put it together. Don't have to be a coder, but you can learn how to build it with the sort of functional attributes of how a site is put together. That alone will just give you such a good foundation. If you want to go into more content marketing and SEO, then like write blogs, get writing, and learn how to make those articles and blogs rank in search engines. 1 second. Sorry.
No worries. Yeah, it's
I actually have a robot vacuum. I didn't realize it was going to go off at this time. Just to go into that, I think definitely do some time in agency because it will expose you to lots of different environments. Always challenge yourself and put yourself out there to learn so many new skills. There's like learning how to do SEO is one thing, but SEO is a lot broader than just knowing SEO. It's about data analysis. It's about understanding marketing and how it fits into the whole funnel as a whole, and looking at it from a strategic point of view. So definitely sort of, I guess, just do it basically, because that's the only way really to get into it these days.
Yeah, I agree. Literally, just do it. Create a site and optimize it.
Definitely.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, Ash. Where can people find you online?
I've got Twitter, Ash New SEO. Just find me there. I kind of tweet about random things that are SEO related. Obviously, I work for Virgin Media too. So we've always got jobs going in the team. So obviously look out for those ones as well. So but other than that, just connect with me on LinkedIn, and good to kind of connect and expand my network.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'll definitely have those links on the description.
Cool.
Well, thanks so much, Ash, and have a good Friday evening and enjoy your holiday.
Yeah. You too. Take care, mate.
Well, cheers. Bye now.